favorite guests. We love talking college football, and he is one of the best, Yogi Roth, on the Right Twitter guest line. How we doing today, Yogi?
How are you?
Good, man. Real good. We're just trying to figure out the news today with the possibility of the SEC and maybe taking the Big Ten with them to kind of break away from the NCAA. Can you see that happening, at least in college football?
You know, I don't know, man. I mean, I've been reading the same articles you're reading.
Yeah.
I think we've seen narratives like this spin up from time to time as positive. Like, you might as well just make it a 40-team league or a super league or 60 teams or whatever, 64 teams or whatever it is. So I don't know what'll happen with these two leagues. I think talent-wise, roster-wise, they've proven to be pretty elite, when you look at the NFL draft, and just the number of players drafted. And I think the vitriol kind of comes to that narrative around well, you're going to get a lot of teams in the playoff anyway. So why do you have to make it a guarantee? And so I don't know, man. I'm probably all over the place on this one of, will they pull away from the NCAA? I don't know. What is the NCAA doing currently? I don't know. Are they enforcing rules across the board? Not really. Is there chaos throughout the sport? 100%. Is there a need for a governing body for a sport that produces so much revenue and has so much attention on it? Probably. I think there's just a lot of layers to the simple question of, should they pull away from the NCAA? I think the first question is what's the NCAA doing day to day, and how are they going to continue to evolve with the times? And I know there's a plan there with Charlie Baker and company too. So I think it's really nuanced. I don't know if that would really happen. And if it did, would it just happen in football? So I don't know, man. I don't see it happening anytime in the immediate future. I think 2030 is going to be the next time where we'll see real change.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that, Yogi, if that would be the time frame. I mean, NCAA aside, just staying within a potential super conference or super conferences, it's like turning that Titanic around, right? How long would it take to even get that organized, to get those super conferences? It sounds like in your mind, at least a good 5 to 6, 7 years.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of what I presume to be the next change, which means that 2 years in advance of that, we'll start hearing about them. And the thing that really raised my eyebrows today was, is it going to be a 16-team playoff, a 5+11 model that's been floated around, which I think would be cool. I mean, here we are celebrating Mike Leach going into the Hall of Fame, or eligible for the Hall of Fame, and presumably going in. And wasn't his rant just one of the all-time greats, where he was like, they got to figure it out at every other level? So if we could get to 16, to me, regardless of leagues and et cetera, everybody has a shot, right? And that means that somebody from the Pac-12 every year is going to find their way to the playoff. If you've got, a 10-3 season or an 11-2 season, I think you'll find representation as potentially one of those at-large bids as what I think will be eventually the best group of 5 conference. So to me, that's what I hope happens. On all the days, the day that we all talk about Leach, we might be talking about a 16-team playoff, and I hope that happens sooner or later.
I'm with you on that. Let me just follow up, though, with what you said. Right now, the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC all play 9 regular season games in conference. The SEC still plays 8. Are they going, in your estimation, I know the Big Ten yells about it, I know the Big 12 and the ACC all yell about it. Will the SEC make that move, or do you think they're just going to say, the hell with you guys, we're staying?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit on me there, but I think ultimately when it comes to 8 and 9 conference games, I've been on this train for forever, right? Because this is the Pac-12 thing. I thought there was an era, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, the Pac-12 should have gone from 9 to 8, just because I thought it was such a disconnect when you looked at the parity of teams out west at the time and the lack of attention on those teams, and or the lack of coverage from major networks and major media outlets, just because of the time of the games, what have you. Now I'm with you. I think you got to get to 9, and if you don't, I do think when it's close and you didn't win your conference championship game, I think you should be impacted by that. I really do. And I get maybe your non-conference game is against Clemson, right? If you're South Carolina, okay. Well, who are the other 2 against? Especially the week 11 thing. To me, that's a that's an element that I've said for many years is an embarrassing part of college football. It's an embarrassing week to me in the SEC when they basically get a bye week in advance of their rivalry game. And I also know the business side, as we all kind of learned about this in recent years, there's money to be made for that ninth conference game. So who's going to pay for that? And I don't know the landscape of the media partners within the SEC and how much they want to pay. ESPN, of course, being the sole one, but there's tremendous value there too. So I'm sure there's some posturing here and there, but I don't think anybody thinks that they're not going to get to 9 because that's just the nature of the game. And even what Steve Sarkisian said earlier this week, I thought rung true, which is I think the era of seeing an undefeated champion is gone. You know, just too many games, the competition's too high, especially if you end up going to 9 conference games and maybe you make an agreement, Big Ten, SEC, if that ends up coming to fruition. Like, it's just going to be too hard it's too hard, I think, in a 12-game season to go undefeated, let alone now you're at, 16, 17 games. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Well, and Yogi, to that point, what I think I kind of sort of hear you saying is it's a non-conference. If you got 2 teams that are 12-0 and you got 4 or 5 teams that end up winning their conference are 13-0, but they're 3 non-conference teams, how do you rank that? How's the committee going to look at that and do this whole RPI thing if 1 through 16 are your rankings? Are they going to pull the curtain back?
I got you. I think overall, to me, what I don't want to see is, teams only say, hey, the wins are the only thing that matters and the losses don't, right? Let's just talk about USC and Notre Dame.
Okay.
Right. I understand potentially moving that game. If you're USC, you got a 9-game conference slate. It's as challenging of a conference as there is in the country. Travel is a challenge. Look at the games they lost last year, let alone 18 to 22-year-old kids. We always know there's a game or 2 a year where you just don't bring it. You're just never going to be perfect. And in this margin to get into the playoff, it's so thin. Why would you go play a team that's a perennial playoff team every year, in addition to what you're already doing? I understand that purview. I also understand 2 things can be true, that it's an amazing historic rivalry. I mean, I've been a part of 4 of those games. I've watched every one of them since I was a kid. I mean, they are epic, right? They produced Heisman Trophy winners, whether it's Carson Palmer, you think of Reggie and Matt and the Tush push and the Bush push. Like, so many great moments come from that fans love. And 2 things can be true. Like, Lincoln Riley's goal is to get to the playoff, and that's how he's going to be evaluated. So I see all that. That's why I would so urge everyone to get to 9 conference games. And the challenge is that it's then going to be the opinion of people in the room on who the other at-large bids are. But that's the decision that we've all made in college football. And I still believe that the people in the room are as smart of a people as the game could put in the room to develop it. I have to believe in that. I don't want to be a pessimist on that. Could it be tweaked? Could it grow? For sure. But overall, like, Lincoln Riley and company are probably looking at this thing and say, what's the best way for us to get to the playoff? Just like we used to back in the day at the Pac-12. And then the answer would be, when people would ask me that, I'd say, go to 8 conference games. Who cares about the revenue? But there's so many factors in here. And that's why I think it's important to be super thoughtful when it comes to this. So I hope people don't just say, well, we got to just get to the most wins and then we'll get a shot. Like, because you're Indiana and your brand equity isn't as grand as Alabama's. Like, of course it's not. And it's never going to be. But you won your games. Are we going to get into the world where it's like, hey, give me 3 easy wins, get me as quickly as possible to 11 wins so I can get in that large berth? Like, I don't think that's going to be great for the game as we see the evolution of it as the playoff continues to grow.
A couple more minutes with Yogi Roth here on ESPN 620 Phoenix. This is kind of a loaded one, but we're heading into an era of revenue sharing with the players. How do you think it's going to change the recruiting? It's going to change the internal the conversations that are going on inside the locker room. The players, the backups, maybe getting paid something, and then opposed to starter. Just like the overall stability. How do you think it's all going to fly with this?
I think it's a challenge. I think growing a culture now is harder than ever before.
Yeah.
I think it's a phrase that gets thrown around all the time, and it's hard, right? Add in the money, add in the transient nature of the sport, add in how often players are getting recruited, right? Like, let's just take the transfer portal. You might get recruited for 2 days, and then you make a decision. and you're in. Like, it's not as though you've been courted for years, right? This isn't, our boy Tyler Shuck getting recruited at Oregon for a long time and then making his decision to go there because of his relationship with the staff at the time. And even then, it doesn't always work out. So I think the way to do it, and a lot of the GMs I've talked to, they said they're just really upfront with the players. And you kind of slot out the money, right? A quarterback's worth, let's just call it 1.5, who's an, unproven all-conference player. An all-conference player is maybe worth 2.2. I'm just kind of giving some examples, which is like crazy that I'm even saying that out loud, but that's the reality. And I think it's just being really blunt. And it's going to make college football, it already has made it really transactional. To me, the challenge is that everybody's on a one-year deal. And that's where I think you could see cultures flip for the positive and also go the other way. When a team that's making a lot of money and guys aren't performing, what happens then when you have mass exodus? Like, that is going to be the biggest challenge. And I think the best way to navigate that, and the coaches and GMs I've connected with too in this offseason, is that they're just, you got to just be straight up and blunt.
Clear to rep.
And if you get beat out, you can make a change after that semester. Like, that is the other side of this thing, and the players having the freedom to leave at any time. Well, coaches, to my understanding, will have the freedom to adjust your payroll every time. Scholarship will always be guaranteed. Academics will always be guaranteed. Like, let us not forget that the same small percentage make it the NFL every year. But I can pay you 1.5 in the fall semester and say, no, dropping you down to $200,000 in the spring semester. Now, agents are clearly trying to hedge against that, and that's why multi-year deals are trying to be put in place. But that's not always going to be the case, in my opinion. I think that we're going to get into this world, and rev share I think will help, because there'll be a pseudo salary cap, and then you're going to have this governing body that's going to hopefully be able to navigate and manage what is real NIL versus what is postured NIL. But that will always be the greatest challenge. And that's why you look at guys like Kurt Signetti, Ken Niumatalolo, like some of these coaches that have just been so seasoned. I think in the next cycle, like, they are going to be the ones that are really valued, maybe more so than like the up and comers. Unless you're coming out of a place like, Kenny came out of Oregon, where like they're just doing everything at a really elite level. They're on the cutting edge of everything from NILs to collectives, roster management, etc. I think these steady coaches that know how to really develop, navigate, deliver messages are going to be the ones that are extremely valuable come December.
Yogi, we always enjoy it, man. Thanks so much for the time. We'll hopefully catch up with you in a couple months.
You got it. Anytime, man. Talk to you soon.
Yogi Roth, Big Ten analyst. You got to check out his podcast called Why Option. Just Google it, and you can follow him on Twitter, X at Yogi Roth. So good stuff there. All right, we're looking for someone brave to take on one of the gorgeous Twin Peaks girls here. Actually, it's Kayla from the Camelback location. And I'm curious if you got what it takes to take the – I was going to say a word that probably wouldn't have came over real well on air. So I'll just reframe and just say we'll take the fifth caller at 602-230-0620 to challenge one of the girls here, which is Kayla. Again, that's 602-230-0620.